It is my honor to welcome a truly inspiring figure in the world of architecture and design, architect Harshvardhan, the principal at Studio Lotus.
Founded in 2002, Studio Lotus is a global design practice known for its mindful approach, blending local resources, culture, and fine details. Architect Harshvardhan's journey from intern to team lead at Studio Lotus showcases his creative excellence and strategic vision. A graduate of Malaviya National Institute of Technology, he has been pivotal in shaping the studio's conscious design ethos, creating spaces rooted in culture and connection. With iconic projects like the House in a Garden and the Stacked Courtyard House, Harsh is not just an architect, but a true design philosopher, passionate about storytelling and the power of design to impact lives.
I'm delighted to invite you all to join me in extending a warm and heartfelt welcome to architect Harshvardhan. It is an honor to have him with us today, and we're excited to hear from him. Let us show our appreciation as we invite him to the stage.
Thank you. Am I audible? Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone had a wonderful lunch and not sleepy. Okay. Before I start, I would very quickly like to thank IIA Kannur for inviting me here and organizing this wonderful event. The organizing team, when I landed yesterday at the airport, I was welcomed with a very heartfelt greetings, quite surprised with that, and for this exciting venue. And also IIA in general for creating these kind of platforms, organizing these events and sharing these ideas. So I'll be talking a little bit about our practice through the lens of the work we do, what lies behind that. But before I start, I would like to acknowledge all our collaborators whose contributions I'm including in this presentation: landscape architects Akshay Kaul, Aditya Advani, structural engineer Mr. B.L. Manjunath, sustainability consultant Gaurav Shori, contractors like Buildcraft India, furniture designers like Manroof Collective, and above all the Studio Lotus team members, past and present, and of course the clients without whom none of this would ever exist. Whatever I am sharing today, I'm doing on their behalf. So we are a team of about 120 people working as teams across various typologies and different scales. We are grateful for all the diverse work that we do every day. So we, as I said, we do our practice across various typologies of work, from the Cafe Lota in National Crafts Museum in Delhi to this small retail store for IIA saris, which has recently opened in Ahmedabad, to the Life Yoga studio that is also just opened in Malcha Marg in New Delhi. A small house like this one, this is built over a very small plot, 200 square meter, for a family in New Delhi, a joint family of 6 members. Slightly bigger house like this one, over an acre of land in Mauritius. We also do a lot of work for developers like this one, Imagine Studios, and their clubhouse in their flagship project, The Trees in Vikhroli, Mumbai. We have been doing a lot of work for Max Estates. This was our first one. It's located in New Delhi, right opposite to Modi Flyover Mills. This is a competition for museum we won with the Aga Khan Trust at the Qutub Shahi Garden in Hyderabad, which is under construction at the moment. We also do a lot of hotels. This one is recently completed for Taj, working with Amuja Niyotya Group. Along with that, we are also doing some work in the space of education. For example, this university for Odia language, currently under construction in Bhubaneswar, and this boarding school in Dehradun. And this is a special one, again, a competition, which we did for Piramal Foundation. It's a learning center for government officials located in Jaipur, Rajasthan. So while the practice and team shapes itself around what we end up with in our plates, and we are mostly grateful for what we get, at a deeper level, I believe that most of our work is anchored by a deeper value system, which guides us every day. The questions we grapple with every day, the ones we believe are relevant in the context of India, the environment we work in, and the compass that guides us, our work. Some of these values and the questions that we dwell in, I would very briefly touch upon, frugality being the first and foremost, and then the approach towards keeping things passive and low-tech versus going for high-tech solutions, making innovation and sustainability accessible to a larger spectrum of projects. Reuse, looking at structures beyond the romance of the history, and seeing whether we can adopt even ordinary structures for their embodied carbon energy. Timelessness, not just in terms of durability, but in terms of how they stand the test of time and are not driven by what's trending, which are often passing fads. Redefining luxury. A lot of our clients, we are fortunate enough to work with HNIs and luxury brands, recognizing that we have a chance to influence aspirations for the mainstream, and redefining aspirations to include approaches that are regional and contextual. And digging into the huge repository of craft that our country offers, along with the indigenous techniques. And in the end, looking inwards rather than being driven by benchmarks that are imported or come in form of various aspects from the West or the East in culture. Above all, sustainability as an integral part of everything we do. And we continue to engage with how we tread lightly on the planet, physically or metaphorically. I'm going to take you through a few examples of illustrating how we have attempted to address some of these questions and our learnings over the years through our work. The first one being this very early project that we finished in 2006, roughly about 18 years ago, for Rajesh Pratap Singh at the Emporium Mall in New Delhi. A designer who is known for the artisanal approach for his clothes rather than using craft as an embellishment. In comparison to the other stores in the same mall, we had no budget and only 45 days to execute this project. We found the contrast of using the ordinary trade of welders in a high-end luxury environment subversive and used them like Rajesh uses tailors to create art. The scissors were utilized by the welders, almost 12,000 of them, sourced from Meerut, and composed them using the central pivot in 12 different patterns. Assembled them offsite and inserted this frame in a white painted shell. All the services and electricals ran outside of this. The clothes were framed by this lattice. The imperfections of the welding seen on the image on the right adds tactility to the space rather than taking away from it. It was very successful in delivering a store that met the budget and time constraints, and most importantly, delivered the brand proposition effectively by using a frugal handmade approach. Quickly jumping on to another project, this one we scaled this understanding of RAS to a different level where we had the privilege of working with a hotel that slowly spread its reach across various regions, giving us a chance to interpret an approach of local and regional luxury in a very, very different way. This is our first project in the walled city of Jodhpur on a 6,000 square feet meter plot with 3 derelict 17th century buildings on it. The access to the plot was through these narrow lanes, through this old gate. What we found was this spectacular view. This was the first architectural project as well, and we were thrilled and intimidated at the same time. These 17th century buildings had 6 families living in them who had modified them crudely over time and had no semblance of the history of the architecture of the time they were built in. Our site plan looked at restoring these 3 buildings as anchors and shared spaces with the restaurant, pool, and spa, and then built all the rooms around them as 3 new buildings which would retain the relationship of the old building and the new one, and with the fort. The first block becomes the second gateway to the site, and the rear 2 blocks become the canvas for these 3 old buildings which connect to the fort. We identified what could be removed from the existing buildings, peeling away layers of paint and removing interventions, till the jewel-like form of these buildings got revealed. And they started connecting their shared history with the fort. The second part of designing the new blocks in a contemporary idiom, which was a lot more challenging. These buildings were west-facing because of their views to the fort, and hence were designed as double-skin structures, like the traditional Jharoka structure of Rajasthan. We began by referencing traditional patterns from the site. We needed the balcony skin to be openable because it faced the fort, and we needed the stone to be only 20 mm thick to be light enough to open up. To cut these patterns in that thickness could only be done through a CNC cutting process because the stone carvers needed a much thicker stone to be able to cut through by hand. The CNC process would have worked out slightly cheaper and quicker. However, we wanted to be authentic to the process and work with craft people, and chose, instead of modifying the pattern to a lighter one, so that it could be cut by hand and keep it authentic. We could still retain the idea of handmade, and this worked out even better than we had ever imagined, as it gave us the elevation you see on the right, where the skin then becomes openable, and then becomes part of the balconies and the circulation spaces, negotiating privacy and transparency, imbuing the new building with a life of their own through changing light and shadow cast by the sharp desert sun. The most challenging bit was detailing the openable stone balcony shutter, 420 kgs of stone that needed to be moved, developed again locally with welders and basic hardware to create a building with a dynamic facade. This was done in 2008, just to create a context, and at that time, these very advanced fittings were not really available in India. The same building acts as a lantern in the night. To breathe life into the machine-cut stone through the texture, we turned to the karigars again for help with the patterns that they generated at site and not on our drawing models. Something that was translated as the organic textile texture on the 50 mm thick stone, 10 feet high partitions that divide the bathroom from the room, as a solid stone perforated headboard of the bed, which also serves as a lamp in the night. All of this creates a dialogue between the old and the new, as a seamless experience of history and today. So I believe with this project, we started realizing, when we have our ears to the ground and engage with people from the region and the materials of the region, that's when a true collaborative process is enabled, and we are able to maximize on the potential a region has to offer. And that we can only do that when we view the people we work with not as means to achieve our vision, but as contributors to the process. This is something that has become a cornerstone of the studio, where we attempt to harness the genius of all the people we work with, rather than focus on becoming individual authors of the project. The other thing that we learned through our embodied energy studies of the old projects that we have already executed more recently was that the same jali, when it is handmade, is about 1/5 or 1/6 the embodied energy of a CNC machine-cut jali. In addition, you get the socio-cultural impact it has on reinvigorating traditional skill, a more tactile outcome which only the handmade can make possible. At the same cost as a machine-made, something you can still only do in a country like ours. I would like to delve a little deeper on this idea of identity and leave us with some questions to ponder on. A lot of people say we need to be more Indian in our design approach. What is truly Indian? Is it a geographical notion based on borders that define India? Do we often get lost in optics of nationalism and nostalgia rather than focusing on the inherent value of being local? What is more Indian in that context? A polyester kurta or a khadi t-shirt? After this, we had an opportunity to work on a project in a totally different context for the same brand, RAS, in Dharamshala, a project which is still under construction. With spectacular views both north and south, and while the architecture here takes a totally different form versus Jodhpur, it celebrates the same value of contemporizing the vernacular. The building itself straddles a ridge, and we use the contours of the hill to create a single 220-meter long building with 40 rooms. The red spine that you see here are individual staircases leading to the rooms in yellow on the top and below the blue band at ground level, which has all the public amenities. This way the rooms have no corridor and enjoy uninterrupted views on either face of the site, of the mountains on the north and the valley on the south, while being totally private from each other. The building is inspired and formed by the powerful yet silent rhythm of a Buddhist monastery, whereas the materiality was derived from the local village homes and temples of the region. We used waste slate from local mines, and masons from Rajasthan honed their skills with local Himachali masons, and together they created thick masonry walls that gave the building thermal mass for radiant heating. And this timeline expression that captures the rhythm and the materiality. The south elevation of the building, with the roof entirely provisioned with solar panels for the under roof radiant heating and hot water supply, the way it straddles on the sloping hill and sits against the mountains. I think engaging with the site and the vernacular gives rise to our understanding of timelessness. It's interesting for us that a lot of people who experience the building even at this stage are unsure whether it's 100 years old or new. A small video to give you a scale of the building. I will quickly move on to the third project, again for RAS that we have done, which is again in a totally different context. It's located between Jodhpur and Jaipur. In an 800-acre rewilded forest, a bioreserve with a rainwater check dam on a private estate, where the family used to run a 12-tenanted property on the dam, which was seasonal. Business was unviable, and RAS entered into JV with the family and converted into a perennial property. The simple curvilinear plan on the dam with 16 pods in a line with the restaurant at one end up the room count. We had only 11 months to design and build the project and created a building that is almost as light as dense due to the fragile nature of the 200-year-old dam and used almost no concrete. The section takes our learning from Kangra, and the circulation is sunken on the forest side, which gives guests uninterrupted private views and balconies towards both the lake and facing sunrise and forest facing sunsets. There is a very light foundation system, precast hewn pipes filled with stone and lime, which an engineered metal structure sits off. We elevated all the tents of the dam to run all the services underneath the slab without digging the topsoil. That's the image of the building at the end of month 5 at starting production. And that's how the finished project sits on top of the dam. The sunken pathway to approach the rooms. Here you move up, and you enter the tent, and the lake gets revealed, taking forward the idea of unfolding thresholds from RAS narrative. We also wanted to reinvent the tradition of block printing of the region and worked with this talented artist named Dhwani Bahal from Rizri, trained in printmaking, who went to site and took inspiration from the local flora and fauna of the region, interpreted them in these very large hand-carved wooden blocks, which are 6 to 8 feet tall. The linen was not only block printed, but also hand embroidered with the migratory birds and animals that come to site. Each then had a different theme, which that got woven in. We took the same narrative into the furniture. So whether it was the cases for the air conditioning units, or the custom-designed camp-style furniture in Kikar wood, and how all these come together to form varying compositions of the narrative. That's a view looking towards the forest, where you enter from the room. You can see there's a skylight that frames the brilliant night sky, and in winter lets sun in over the bed. And that's when you begin to look towards the lake, where you step out from inside into the garden outside. And as you move onto the lake, you see the building lightly perched on the dam. Towards the right, you see the common area, which is also a reception bar and the restaurant, which we took the narrative of the traditional pavilions of the region and interpreted it in dry construction without using any cement. It has a wraparound veranda with a pool on the sunken side of the dam, which cascades down into a bauli that was revived. The construction system is all done in chitta sandstone clamped onto metal. Where people touch a stone, it has chisel texture on it, which is done by, again, hands. The air conditioning grills were also hand cut. And this is how the building sits on top of the dam. There's the veranda, the courtyard between the baradari and the tents. And the interior again borrows on the same vocabulary that Dhwani Bahal had developed for the textiles, which was then reinterpreted onto stone, which also gets translated into the hand-carved bar unit with migratory flamingos that visit Chhatrasagar during winter. The sundowner veranda overlooking the forest. That's a kitchen block made of reclaimed stone that we got from the site as we dug up the foundations of the old tents. The bauli that Akshay called the landscape architect created around the old Devi temple that existed at site. And together with the owners, we also found a way to keep the women from the neighboring villages actively engaged in the upkeep of the decor through lipai with cow dung and rangolis in chuna, including the hand-painted numbering on the rooms. A very quick video. Okay, something happened, the video didn't play. All right. I'll move on to presenting the next project, which has a completely different context. It's nestled in Himalayas in Uttarakhand, where we worked with a 100-acre site, the passion project of a client who loved the hills and wanted to develop an eco-conscious community. The biggest problem in the hills is the impact of torrential rain and the rampant unplanned construction causing erosion and landslides. And in spite of that, ironically, there being no water for consumption. We worked with Akshay Kaul to create a master plan on how to first map a water and forest management strategy, and then only around that developed our road networks and the location for the houses and hotel and ecology first approach, which got translated in the manner in which the roads were cut with minimal cut and fill and retaining walls using hydroseeding, bamboo brick walls, and brush layering, which are all bioengineering methods of stabilizing the hillside. For water retention and management, about 300 check dams of dry stone have been created across the swathes on the site over a period of 3 years alone. These have not only got water to the site, but have regenerated the wells for the village downstream. Because all the water has percolated into the hill and began to revive the entire ecosystem of underground aquifers over time. The houses themselves are collection points for the rainwater. The water that's collected from the rooftop of one home gets used by the home downstream through a gravity-fed network. The wastewater too gets harnessed, recycled, and used for irrigation. The other thing we tried to do is build in areas which are not suitable for farming, on slopes virtually impossible to build in traditional methods of construction. With Mr. B.L. Manjunath, who designed the structure, we developed a construction technique where we could retain the trees with almost no cut and fill, not altering the slope of the hill. We chose a construction methodology where we didn't need cranes and heavy machinery, and hence ensure the surrounding trees didn't get impacted. This is a scale model of a weave-like structure system. Each module is less than 100 kgs, enabling manual construction. The house is tilted off the ground, allowing the rainwater to flow through. And thereafter, a multi-layered dry construction system with almost no concrete creates a highly insulated shell, minimizing energy consumption. The structure came up very quickly. It was done in metal. And as you can see here, the trees around this villa are all intact. Timber and slate as the were primarily used for the material for the facade. You can see the weave of the lightweight metal structure expressed on the outside and inside, as well as the walls weave in. A few handcraft details as you approach the house. The outside and the inside connected very, very strongly with the use of skylights, both in terms the way the house connects with the courtyard on the south side and the way the balconies perch out onto the trees. The house encapsulated within the trees. And as you slowly start moving away from it, you will start it disappearing in the forest itself, which was our intent in the first place. This is a totally different context of an interior project we did for a restaurant and bar in Dubai. It was a nouvelle Indian cuisine restaurant, and the brand wanted to move away from the cliche of India, the traditional thali, the turbaned waiters, and do something more vibrant, more fun, and colorful. We had a dialogue with the client, enrolling them to use craft to bring this narrative alive in an authentic expression beyond just an image. We used stone inlay techniques in collaboration with Manroof Collective, the furniture designer, for tables in different zones. Some of these inlaid as board games in the lounge furniture as well. Lights developed by craftsman Ayush Kasliwal, based out of Jaipur, and how these sit within the space. Brass etching techniques and inlay work in the floor, resembling rangolis of Indian patterns. On the left is a brass millwork we developed with a metal artisan in Delhi, and on the right, stained glass work done by Ayush Kasliwal from Jaipur, and how these come alive in the space. You begin to see this vibrant space that belongs to Dubai, but is being brought to life using craft and the handmade, and allowing us to put the process over mere imagery. And even more exciting because we could use it outside of a historical narrative. This is a very recently completed project. Here we addressed a very, very different concern for the client. We were asked by a leading jeweler in Jaipur to build a new store, a flagship store for her. There was a structure that she had built over a couple of years before she had come to us to design the flagship, and she was unhappy with the way the building was shaping up. She gave us the mandate to bring down the building completely if needed, and while it was very tempting as an architect to build a ground-up structure free of any limitations, the structure itself was in a very good shape, and it would have been criminal to waste all this concrete, over 1 million kilograms of embodied carbon dioxide. We reshaped the slabs, retaining the entire structure system, scooped out connections, and created this building, which has a museum and a retail space on the lower level. The top porous floor that you see is going to be an F&B space. This is all done in Jodhpur stone because the client traces her roots back to Jodhpur, and the stone is distinct, yet it sits well in the context of the pink city that Jaipur is. Stylistically, the building is a synthesis of styles that the region is known for: Art Deco, Mughal, and Rajput styles, of all which we have influenced by in the region. There are curved corner panels and scooped out arch forms, the play of shadow and light. And the building represents a contemporary handmade building with processes and materials that bridge the contemporary and the history. We have taken this idea into the interior as well, where the multiple retail pods are defined by frescoes done by Jaipur miniature artists. It took several months for them to work on curved ceilings at a scale they were totally unfamiliar with. Very different topic that we are, I will just take it back, exploring back at the practice, designing for circularity. I will talk about it through the lens of a different project. This is a competition we won for the Mehrangarh Fort for a visitor and ticketing center at the base of the fort. The building is naturally ventilated pavilion, silted off the rocky valley so that it does not alter the natural terrain or the flow of rainwater. We propose a building that gets sunken into the valley that exists south of the road leading to the fort, becoming the gateway to enter the site. One of the reasons they wanted this visitor center is because the old ticketing area was redundant and a new building was needed in place of an existing building that had to be demolished as it had gone out of use. We propose looking at the new building as an adaptable system of metal and stone without the use of concrete, where the building could be reshaped or dismantled or moved or reconfigured for new uses as the fort might discover with time. This system also uses less than 1/3 of the amount of stone as a solid stone masonry building. The woven modular steel structure takes in a stone panel of 10 feet tall and 50 mm thick, and horizontal shelves and lintels slide in as a system of assembly, which can be disassembled if required. The flooring in stone slabs placed on a metal frame, which allows rain to flow through the slabs into the hillside. This is a picture while the building was under construction. This construction technique allowed us to retain the trees which slice through the structure. And that's how the building sits on the edge of the slope. These are some sun shading screens. And again, taking the same philosophy of handmade, working with artisans, breathing life into the machine-cut stone slabs. So this project, we have been working on this project for almost, I believe, 4 years now, more than that actually. It has become a case study for us where the idea of appropriating engineering and craft as a synergetic whole to create a system that is rooted yet forward-looking. It also brought us to a very, very critical learning that a classical determinist model where the architect is the author and directs everyone to follow their instructions gives us a certain kind of result, which to us as a process is far less exciting than this model that allows all the stakeholders to shape the final project, a far more richer outcome. This process needs our drawings and approach, our models to be flexible enough to allow for an improvement and contribution at each stage of the project, which is a difficult but immensely rewarding process. Over time, we have learned that what becomes more important than the design vision of one person is a process that empowers and engages people in a deeper method. And the same practice we have brought into the design of the organization as well. We realized over time that design driven primarily by the partners, and partners I mean people like me or Amrish or Ankur, had its own limitations. Initially, we looked at the process of collaboration, included clients, contractors, and consultants. We slowly began to start thinking of the studio as something that is alive beyond the walls and the team members of the studio, as our values that are seeded in different stakeholders or partners in our thought. For instance, we work extensively with Studio Lotus alumni as an extended network. Our consultants, our contractors, artisans, and vendors all became participants in the process. The more boundaries we removed, and the more we are able to include. We have tried to define for ourselves a set of guiding principles that guide us, that have evolved over years, what we hold ourselves to account to. This is the primary factor that binds us together. To give you a sense of how we have defined these, let me walk you through a couple of them in greater detail. One of them I have already touched upon earlier, an attitude of gratitude. Our earlier discovery was that for us to foster a spirit of excellence, one that brings our best selves to each project we do, even when it's a small renovation to a very, very large-scale museum, this value particularly of holding gratitude towards what we do every day and every hour enables us to do that. Another one, trust as a starting point, is critical for the process, knowing that each person will strive to do their best given the opportunity to do so. Thus, our focus is on creating the right conditions and the right platform for this to happen. The last project I want to share is one where these values are perhaps more clearly evident in the way they come alive, where we had the opportunity to design offices for the State Department of Agriculture. Being an enlightened government, included a farmers' learning center as well in the program. The first intervention we did was suggesting opening up this facility to the citizens of Bhubaneswar, and we did so by lifting up all the office spaces and making the ground plane free and available for the larger people to make use of it. The top 3 floors are the offices. The lower floor is a ground plane that opens up to street by sharing amenities that were created for the buildings such as the library, auditorium, cafeteria, exhibition galleries, and the gardens. This is then used for events, for workshops, for arts, and for people to wander through. The offices close at 5 p.m. and the building stays open till 10 p.m. Again, while the architecture of the building is visually very striking, one of the things we really dwell with for a bit is the idea of adaptive thermal comfort, which is an area of, again, an active engagement and discovery we are working on. And I want to put your attention on these 2 images. We want to move away from this idea of saying there should be one benchmark for comfort. Many of us debate if the most comfortable temperature is 22 degrees or 27 degrees. The real question is for whom? If you see these 2 people on the left, the one who is in Ladakh and the one who is in Kerala, would you think they have a common temperature of thermal comfort? When you begin to understand where you are from and who you are building for, you can realize that the standards of comfort are based on past and present comfort. I'm just going to, do I have 3 minutes? Okay. When we dress appropriately and are in tune with our bodies and the outdoors, our body is comfortable with lesser variations in temperature. For Bhubaneswar, we found this temperature to be in 29 degrees Celsius in the shade with a slow-moving fan hitting speed of 1 meter per second on our skin. We utilized night purge system, which was taking air in the night, restoring it in the building, in walls and the furniture and the wall system and the floor system, and then releasing it back in the office spaces during the afternoon and the day. As a result, what we are able to achieve is operating energy benchmarks, which are 1/3 or 1/4 of what has been set as the green building target for office buildings in 2030. There's a view of the courtyard. And the building, of course, has a strong identity derived from the ikat weaves of the region. We used 4 colors of brick representing the different soil of the state as louvers, which shade the glazing and give identity to the building. The building creates a contemporary expression that celebrates the region, moving away from the universal aspiration of the contemporary through minimalism or steel and glass. We also convinced the government to give the patronage to a body of regional skills and crafts at an architectural scale. It was interesting for us to find out that most artisans were farmers who worked as artisans in non-farming seasons. We were very fortunate to find Sibanand Bol, an architect from Bhubaneswar who runs the collective craft. We set the brief, created the canvas, and then left it to him and the craftspeople to their own process. I'll just quickly run through it. Towards the end, I'm just leaving you with a video. This is through the words and the view of Sibanand Bol, who was the craft curator.
We were quite excited, with the quantum of work that could be generated if artisans, if craft and architecture could come together. And I think that has been a big achievement, that this building project could generate work for about 50 artisans for a continuous 6 months. And we actually got artisans who had stopped working with the traditional skills. We convinced them to come back and to start working again.
ସାଥିରେ କାମ କରୁଥିଲେ ସେମାନେ ବି ସେମିତିକା ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ ଗୋଟିଏ ହିଁ କାମ ଭିତରେ ରହିକି ତାଙ୍କର ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରାଟା ସେ ଗୋଟିଏ ଭିତରେ ରହିଥିଲା। ନିର୍ଦ୍ଦିଷ୍ଟ ମୂର୍ତ୍ତି ବନେଇବାରେ ତାଙ୍କ ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରାଟା ସେତିକି ଭିତରେ ସୀମିତ ଥିଲା, ଯାହାଫଳରେ ଏହି କାମଟା କୃଷି ଭବନ କାମ କରିବା ପରେ ଆମମାନଙ୍କୁ ଦେଖାଗଲା ଯେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଆମେ ଆମ କଳାଟାକୁ କେମିତିକା ଅନ୍ୟ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରେ ବି ଦେଖିପାରିବା।
It's a perfect setting for us where we could bring in artisans and craft. If you talk of farmers and if you talk about people coming from villages to this building, then we want to show them something that's familiar to their environment, and that is where craft comes in.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your listening and your time.
Thank you, Architect Harshvardhan, for your inspiring words and for sharing your experience with us today. To show our appreciation for Harshvardhan's valuable time and insights, we would like to present you with a token of our gratitude. This memento represents the immense respect we have for your work and the inspiration you provide to so many of us. I would now like to invite Architect Prashant Mohan, Architect Chitra K, and our associate partner, Philips, to stage to present the memento to Architect Harshvardhan. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. Go, go, go.